Welcome back. Now that we have sockets and we can access the locations of those sockets in space, we'd like to spawn some beams at those locations that will fly forward in the direction of whatever the drone is aiming at, and the drone is going to be a lot more dangerous. So we need some kind of mesh or object that we can shoot out from the rifle. And I'd like to just create a basic mesh that we can send out that looks kind of like a beam that you would see from a sci-fi rifle. Now, we just need a basic cylinder for this shape because it's going to be flying through the air quite quickly. So a basic cylinder will do the job. So let's make a cylinder. We can do that by changing our selection mode up here to modeling mode. Notice that Shift 5 is the shortcut for that. So if you don't want to select it, you can simply hit Shift 5. And we're now in modeling mode. And I'd like to create some geometry. Now, we have different sections here. We want to be in Create, and I want to select Cylinder. And now we see a lot of different options. And if we hover our mouse over here, we can get a cylinder. We can click to create that cylinder. And before finalizing the creation of the cylinder by clicking Accept, we're going to change some properties. I'd like to change its height for one. I'm going to drag that height all the way down so that our cylinder is not so tall. Let's make it something like 20. And our radius needs to come down as well. So we're going to drag that on down. And I want this to be quite small. I'm going to try a value of 2. Even that might be a little bit large. I'm going to try a value of 1. 1 might be a little too thin. Let's try 1.8. That might be a good compromise. And I may wish to have this a little longer. I'm going to try 30. I think that might be just about right. So now that my cylinder looks good, I'm going to click on Accept. But now I see a problem, and that's that I want my cylinder to be facing the forward direction, not the up direction. But we can change that here in modeling mode as well by clicking on the X form or transform section and choosing Edit Pivot. Now we can rotate our pivot point so that our cylinder is facing down the x-axis. We could do that by rotating by 90 degrees so that that red arrow or line is going up our cylinder. If I click on Accept, well, it doesn't look like anything changed, but if we drag another one of these into our world, we'll see the change. We can right-click and browse to the asset, and we're going to see that it's in our maps in a new folder called Generated. If I drag that in, we'll see that now it's facing the correct direction. It's going down the x-axis, which is exactly what I wanted. So I can take this one and delete it, and I now have this cylinder. Now, if yours is going the wrong way, if it's facing the negative x direction, you're going to want to go back to Edit Pivot and rotate it around by 180 degrees, but mine looks good, so we're going to keep it. I'm going to hit Shift 1 to go out of modeling mode and go back to selection mode so that I can see my beautiful new cylinder mesh that's going to work just fine for a blaster beam, except it has no material and I'd like it to be red and glowy. So we're going to make a material for this. Before we do that though, I want to move it out of this generated folder into my assets folder. I'm going to have a new folder in assets. So let's right click, make a new folder. I'm going to call this blaster beam. And I'd like my blaster beam to be in there. So I'm going to go back to generated into Druid. It called it Druid in my case, but it'll be called something else in your case. Either case, let's drag it into blaster beam in the assets folder. We'll select move here. And in Blaster Beam, I'm actually going to rename this to SM_Blaster Beam. And now I have my Blaster Beam. And I'd like a materials folder, so I'm going to make a new folder called Materials. And I'm going to make a new material for my Blaster Beam. So I'm going to go here into Materials. I'm going to right click and I'm going to make a new material. I could select it here from Create Basic Asset. Or you probably noticed all these other menu items. We could go down to material and choose material from here as well. Either way, we're going to make a new material. I'm going to call it M_Blaster Beam. And this is going to be a very simple material we're going to only use emissive color. Now to get a color, I'm going to hold down 3 and left click to get a 3-dimensional color. I'm going to double click it. I'm going to drag that saturation all the way up, and I'm going to drag the value all the way up so that we have a pure red color. And I can drag that straight into emissive color, and we have a glowy material. Now we just need to save our material and apply this to our new mesh. So we can go back and open SM Blaster Beam and go to the details panel and change its material to M Blaster Beam. Now it does emit light, but in broad daylight, it doesn't look that bright. We can kind of see what it looks like in the shade by duplicating our platform here, the ground, by holding Alt and clicking and dragging it up. Now this is quite a thick ground, so make sure we drag the entire thing up a good deal, and we can focus back in on our blaster beam, and we can see how much it glows. Not a lot, and of course, our eyesight is adjusting to the light, so it gets bright again, but it's not that bright. It's pretty bright, but it could be brighter, and we can make it brighter in our material by overdriving it. We can simply take the red, green, blue values passed in and multiply. We can drag off of this RGB color value and type in mult and get a multiply node, and we'll multiply that color by a scalar. I'm going to choose about 20 and hook that into emissive color. And now we see that it's a good deal brighter. We can even use a larger value like 50 or even 100, 120. That's going to make it nice and bright. And if we apply that, we'll go back and see that it's a good deal brighter. So when this flies through the air, it's going to look pretty cool. So we've now created a new asset. We have a cylinder with a nice bright color. It's going to glow. It's going to look amazing once we start sending these through the air from our drone's rifle using those socket locations. It's going to look great, and we're going to continue with that in the next video. Great job. I'll see you soon.